Welcome everyone. We'll just wait till we get a few people signing in. A few more people joining us. All right, we'll kick off. Welcome everyone. This is the fourth in the Crew in Conversation webinar series. We've, in the last few weeks, had some amazing hospitality and events professionals and thought leaders share some information about what they've been doing through this pandemic crisis that we're all living through. And today we're actually changing that up a little bit. We're talking travel and hotels. And obviously there's some great news with domestic travel restrictions being eased to a degree around Australia. And we'll be able to soon move a little more freely, at least around our own country. But it's far from business as usual. And as a result, there's a lot of background things going on in hotels and accommodation that we wanted to explore today. And so we've got three hospitality experts with us today who I want to introduce to you. We've got Timo Bures from the Old Clare Hotel in Chippendale. Timo is the general manager of the Old Clare, which is boutique in name and nature. And that's been a huge advantage to him and his staff in this time, which he will tell us about. They lost much of their forward business in just a few days, but he managed to regroup with his team and came up with some innovative ideas and concepts, which he'll share with us today. So welcome, Timo. We have Penny Rafferty here from Luxury Lodges of Australia. Penny is the executive officer for Luxury Lodges. And if you don't know what they are, they're a collection of 19 high-end lodges and camps in diverse and amazing regions and locations around Australia. They include Longitude 131 at Uluru, Lake House in Daylesford, the Emirates One and Only in Walgan Valley, South Sallis in WA, and Lizard Island in Queensland, among others. And they've come off a really tough summer, Luxury Lodges, which saw the devastating loss of Southern Ocean Lodge in the Kangaroo Island bushfires. And Penny's lodges, between them, are facing months of low to no revenue as they slowly go through the process of reopening. And Penny's working really hard with those lodges to help them share their message before and during the reopening phase of the importance of nature and place for those lodges. And she'll be sharing that information with us. And then we have Stephen Howard, who is the Group Marketing Director for Ovolo Hotels, which has properties in Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney and Brisbane, but is actually headquartered in Hong Kong. And for Stephen and his teams, it's all been about being really reactive and innovative to get through this crisis. So he'll be sharing information about how he and his team have been doing that. So welcome everybody. And just so you know, I'm Sally Webb from the Crew. I should have introduced myself to begin with. I'm Content Director at the Crew. So I'll go to each of the panelists individually. And sorry, I should just mention that there will be an opportunity for questions from our attendees. If you want to ask a question, use the Q&A button in the black panel at the bottom or the chat button, and you can ask your question there and I'll put them to the panelists later in the session. So first off, Timo, the Old Clare Hotel really is a boutique hotel with just 69 rooms and suites. How much of an advantage was it to be super small and nimble at this time of crisis. And what did you and your team end up having to do?
I think one of the big advantages that being so small had is that all the people that work with us, from entry level all the way up to myself, I just used to doing more than one very specific job. Where you go to a larger property and you may have, a staff of 300, 400 people that have very specific tasks and very specific skills, and may not be aware of some of the tasks that other people take on. Being very small was really, it was already a given that people could do multiple jobs, that people were used to do multiple jobs, and that when, unfortunately, like most other hotels, we had to stand people down and the number of staff decreased, people were able to almost seamlessly step into roles, covering 2 roles, covering 3 roles at a time. They were used to it, and there was, I guess, minimal training of making that quite seamless. And also, there were no reservations about doing so, where maybe there may be a question for someone that is in a larger group of taking on housekeeping duties. For us, our heads of department picked up the mop and mopped the floors and vacuumed the carpets, and it was just not necessarily a normal thing to do, but it wasn't really an extraordinary request to really change the job.
A bit of an all hands on deck thing without any pushback.
Absolutely. And it is a daily thing, maybe not to the extremes that we've seen at the moment. Again, being 69 rooms means when occupancy falls back to 5%, 3%, 10%, as it has, and below that in certain weeks as well, means that we're talking about 3 rooms, 4 rooms, 10 rooms that are occupied. And you are able to manage that and even provide a high service level with a very small amount of people still.
Yeah. And your occupancy dropped really quickly. So what were the initiatives that you came up with at the beginning of that? And what have you what worked and what didn't?
Mm-hmm. Now, on the one side, we obviously were there where people were in lockdown, and where all of a sudden in a space working from home, where people were homeschooling, or one partner was homeschooling maybe and the other partner was trying to work from home. Having undertaken a couple of days of homeschooling in the early days myself, that was probably the most stressful thing in the last 2 months that I have undertaken.
I understand.
And so we introduced this idea that people could come to a hotel. All our hotels have great desk space, great Wi-Fi, and we thought, maybe this can be just a workspace. You can go into a room at a very discounted rate, use the desk and have somewhere to work, but still, be separated from people. Having said that, that is probably not the greatest example. Simple that I think we were a bit too early almost with that. I think there's a number of people that kind of enjoyed being more at home, not having the commute, having more time with the family. And where maybe only over the last couple of weeks, they have realized that maybe it's getting a bit much now, and maybe, a work environment or a separate environment would be something that is better. And so that is not something that necessarily has taken off, but it was just something also to, I guess, remain in the conversation. And that was a big idea for us as well. How can we, stay relevant as well? How can we offer some of the services, and how can we use that isolated space of 69 rooms, to the advantage of people that wanted to have a space that were maybe not comfortable mingling, but also didn't want to necessarily stay at home. We had a number of bars, a number of restaurants, and so there's obviously a large number of stock that was in the building already. With the bars and restaurants having to close, we decided on, and also with liquor and gaming announcing that they were turning more or less a blind eye on things, we decided that a project which was underway already of opening a bottle shop, we would undertake, and with incredible effort from the marketing team, set up a website in 2 days with an online store, with some of the team from the bar that really just more or less set up an impromptu bottle shop that was received phenomenally. Where people that came and stocked up for a home, where people bought online, where, it came to myself or some other HODs, dropping a bag of wine into the boot of their car and driving it over to Annandale and dropping it off. And so that was really something that came at no cost to us, obviously regulating the cash flow and working with what we had in place was really important. And so it was very successful. In the month of April, it was so successful that the revenue we generated through that bottle shop was in excess of that what we generated with accommodation.
So obviously that one is something that you're going to continue going forward.
Absolutely. We also thought about, people, there are things about a hotel experience. Of course, if you can't travel, you don't want to travel. There's certain things about hotel experience that people really love and people really enjoy, and maybe such as putting on a very comfortable bathrobe.
Oh yes.
Such as having maybe a slightly different feeling in the room, be that through a personalized scent that we have, for example, that we offer, or really just some sort of personalized service. And so we worked on trying to bring the hotel experience to people's homes, and to really bring as much as we could from the hotel to someone, and just to, maybe have a comfortable night in, or a romantic night in, or a slightly different night in at home, other than just having takeaway food, from a different restaurant that we haven't tried yet. Really have those small other things, that where
it sounds a little bit like Timo selling the things that a lot of people normally pinch from a hotel.
Oh, absolutely. But again, this is, for us, the BS shop concept was really one of, being able to bring as much of the hotel to your home. And so it's not only alcohol that we sold. We sold the bathrobes. We sold the vases that we have. We have beautiful vases that are bespoke for the hotel, blankets bespoke for the hotel. And we wanted to offer these things. And there was the opportunity, if you enjoyed our bathrobe so much that you wanted to keep it at the end, you could. There was an opportunity for you to purchase. And again, it was really trying to bring that experience into someone's house.
Fantastic. I'll come to Stephen. Being an international group, even though obviously there's a number of properties here, Overlow Hotels had already had experience of SARS and MERS, and of course living through the unrest in Hong Kong over the past few years. How did that help you and your management team to sort of understand potentially what was coming, and how quickly did you act?
Yeah, we were very, fortunate in some respects to be able to have experienced SARS, MERS, and civil unrest in Hong Kong, because we were able to kind of react quite quickly here in Australia off the basis of what we were already implementing in Hong Kong, both from an operational, financial perspective, but also from a marketing perspective, and how we were engaging with our guests, our future guests, coming up with creative ideas to keep them engaged over this period, and then also driving bookings. How can we look at different revenue streams when particularly, and we all know that there just wasn't really anything out there, and what was out there was very minimal. And how we did that was tried to come up with ideas that weren't necessarily in line with a lot of other hotel groups. And I know Timo was pretty much the first to innovate around the work from hotel idea, and we wanted to take that a little bit further, and we thought, well, let's put a restaurant in a room. So that's one thing that we've done here, and it's created a great buzz for our brand, not just here but overseas as well. And we're getting inundated with phone calls around it. Not just, even with the easing of restrictions, there's still people out there that are wanting to abide by the social distancing, or are in some ways still hurt by that whole experience and want to be cautious. So we're still seeing a lot of inquiries come through for that, and likewise generating content over this period that keeps people engaged, it's relevant, but isn't necessarily a hard sell, because again, we know people weren't necessarily looking to travel. So how do we engage with people on a meaningful and empathetic level? And we tried to do that through certain videos, through our own database and EDMs, and then providing packages that also were relevant to that period of time as well.
And did people take up those packages for things like, quarantine stays and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we weren't big enough, unfortunately, to take some of that, or fortunately, to take the quarantine business from the government. So we had to think of other ways of, from a digital perspective, to try and engage with people that were looking to quarantine outside of that. So we had certain packages which allowed for that, and not just room nights, but how do we also take that overload level, and it's not in our DNA to conform, and so we came up with different ideas within those packages to sell it in a different form to people. We've also found that there's we did obviously have the work from hotel package out there, but wasn't something that we were actively pushing. If people found it, it was there. We sold a few rooms through that and still continue to do so. We've got our escape from reality package, which allows people that are cooped up at home in certain jurisdictions and allowed travel or staycations at the time to be able to go out and stay in the hotel and play games, eat popcorn, watch movies, have shots in the room, get a little bit frisky and enjoy life. And then we've also looked at other ways as well, through, and Timo's, I'm not sure whether he's part of this, Design Hotels, but Design Hotels is obviously part of Marriott Bonvoy. So within Hong Kong, our Southside property is part of Design Hotels, and we're finding a lot of people are actually those points hoarders out there are looking to keep those points going and keep their status going with Marriott Bonvoy. So we're looking at how we can engage with those people and sell on that basis as well. So there's lots of different angles that we've taken over this time to try and drive business, be different, be innovative, keep brand awareness out there and be relevant in the marketplace over this period of time. And I'd like to hope that we've done a reasonable job at doing that and connecting with our guests and our audience, so that when travel does return back to where it was, that Overlow will be a hotel group of choice for people.
Absolutely. Well, this is a nice little segue to Penny, because obviously with luxury lodges, connection to place is extremely important to everything about every one of the lodges and experiences that you work with. And I have a question, which is, how do you share that message when you can't actually get anywhere near the location in some cases? And how important will that sense of connection be to the reopening and rebuilding phase?
I guess in line with most people, an awful lot of people, when the world went into lockdown, there was so much noise. I think sharing that core message was, I took the course of not actually communicating for those first few weeks, except to our trade and distribution partners, for whom there was an incredible lust for learning while in lockdown, partly because for once they weren't so busy, 2, they couldn't go anywhere, and 3, it really gave them something fairly sexy to talk about and think about. So the first thing we did was brush up all of our training materials and our assets on behalf of the lodges, and distributed those far and wide, and had incredible take up, a lot of virtual conversations and webinars and requests. I guess in the last couple of weeks in particular, probably the last 3 weeks, I guess there's been within Australia, there's clearly been a distinct shift. The minute people knew that there was the genuine potential for a loosening of travel restrictions, that for some people paralysis, for some people, they call it the dreaming phase, it started to shift into, I'm so looking forward to doing something. And the phones really have started ringing, and with mixed but very positive signs into the future. Listen, coming off a zero base because the lodges all closed, and multitasking and innovating, some great stories there for possibly for another time. But the phones have certainly started ringing, and there is an absolute pent-up desire. Whether that sticks, how long that is, how long it takes for that to sort of be viable, will all depend on Bures, air capacity. But that, I guess the location of the lodges, we're naturally isolated, so we, that post lockdown fear or people wanting to go, okay, I need to be observing social distancing and all that kind of, hey, it's easy.
It's naturally there, isn't it?
It's naturally there. They're small, they're spacious, they're usually within a very large location because they're not just a place to stay. It is about experiencing.
Well, actually, and that's, it's interesting that you say that, because obviously it's each of those lodges are part of an ecosystem which is actually pivotal to communities in which they operate. So there's a real halo effect on the economies and the communities of those surrounding areas. Can you tell us a bit about what the impact of that has been, but also the importance of obviously getting these lodges back up and running, because, lots of scores and hundreds of people and families and things depend upon it.
So about a year ago, I did a project with the lodges, asking them to let me know how many tourism businesses they partnered with that were visible to guests. So not the local tradies, not the sparkies or the delivery guys, but tourism businesses. So whether it was the local gin company and the local cheesemaker and food producers, or the guides, or the specialists, the marine biologists, or the helicopter companies, balloon companies, you name it. And across 15 lodges out of the 19, there were over 1,600 other local regional tourism businesses that were visible to guests that they partnered with. When Southern Ocean Lodge burnt down, there were over 154 businesses that they partnered with on Kangaroo Island and locally in South Australia that were impacted directly by that. So the value of, I think one of the silver linings out of this whole thing is that the value of tourism to regional economies and regional tourism as the lifeblood of regional Australia has, the light has definitely been shone on that through bushfires and COVID. And it's not just about the major tourism regions, it's about the smaller regions who are reliant on tourism. And that partnership is actually part of the fabric of why do people go there? You don't go just to stay somewhere, you go to actually meet the people, do the things, you go for how it makes you feel. And those people, characters, produce, the artisanship, the craftsmanship, the guides are what make you feel something.
And have the lodges been in contact with those partners during this time? I mean, it must be, a very sort of symbiotic relationship. It must be something that sort of is, they're almost sort of not welded on to each other, but they're very connected, aren't they?
They're very connected. And I guess they're in contact as much as you reasonably would expect when lodges are closed. And certainly engaging with partners where they can, and particularly where they know partners are also having to innovate and pivot and, oh God, I said the P word.
Oh, Penny.
There are some words I've banned people using within luxury lodges, and that's one of them. And I just said it. Oh, I'm in trouble.
Unprecedented's another one.
Oh, no,
we're a bit over that.
That can't be used either. The U word and the P word. Anyway, actually one of my favourite ones is, Brian Barry and Karina, owners of Pretty Beach House. He opened an online wine store. It's like his boyhood dream come true that he actually gets to be the bon vivant online wine connoisseur. And meanwhile, Karina has innovated and turned Bell's at Kilcare into a sourdough bakery. The team at Lake House have got all of their chefs and people working in the gardens at Dairy Flat Farm doing this extraordinary stuff. Charlie's got at Arkaba has got all his guides. The whole garden, you won't recognise it. The whole garden, everything has been done. The homesteads had a complete makeover, multi-skilling.
Yeah, I think using the downtime, if we want to sort of refer to it as that productively, is really interesting. And I know that Stephen, you were telling me that you and your team have kind of got into your back end, if you like, of the digital back end of the business quite a lot and tidied a few things up. And I know, Timo, you were talking also about how, you know, things that maybe sometimes take a long time to change in hotels when you're working 24/7. Suddenly you've had this sort of respite to be able to do a few of those things. Can you both sort of talk to that for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, look, I always like to use the term that in hotels and hospitality, everyone talks this long game, but plays the short game. And I think this time, because realistically, we've had to innovate and come up with different ideas. In that short term, we've been focused on that, but then also once we've got past that point, it's actually allowed us to really focus on that long game. And I think that's part of the really exciting thing in our team. And I'm sure, like by the sounds of it, Penny and Timo obviously speak of the same thing, that the level of teamwork that's come out of this, not just internally, but externally. Like I've had people reach out to me asking whether I need help within the industry. Likewise, I've done it to other people. But from a back-end perspective, we are looking at that long game. How can we improve ourselves and improve our service offering from a digital perspective to help drive conversions into the future? And we're looking at a number of different platforms, our Google Analytics, and how we can utilize that better to drive business, how we're utilizing our search terms, our SEO, and we're utilizing this downtime that we don't normally have to be able to push forward some of those projects that allow us to look for that long game and play that long game into the future.
Timo?
Yeah, on our side is the place is a little bit a hive of ideas anytime. And we find ourselves just, and maybe that is like disadvantage of having, no head office and having not like a big head count that sits behind and can prepare something while the business is running. But we find ourselves with such a backlog of ideas, that we had and maybe that we discarded or just put on the back burner. The BS shop, again, the licensing process is in place at the moment. It hasn't gone through, but it was launched before this started. And for us, it was really the opportunity to really say, okay, what are all these things that we actually wanted to do? To also say, Penny mentioned that they work with their partners on the training and on the presentations. We did the same thing internally too. And we, after the first couple of weeks of, panic, let's call it that, really, okay, what are we going to do? Where are we here? It was really that looking at, okay, this is an opportunity. We can do a lot of things that we wanted to do for a long time that we can introduce. We can also hit just the reset button, introducing, a new process of something that we've done the same way for maybe 3 or 4 years, and changing that while there's only 3 or 4 of us here. And as we bring people back, training them into that and making that the new normal for them, to have all the operating procedures, everything, really everything that we do, question of why we're doing it that way, can we do it better, and how can we introduce it? It's really been an opportunity for us as well.
An opportunity to reset. Penny, just I wanted to ask you, international travellers have obviously been hugely important to the lodges or to most of the lodges over a long period of time. So in the short term, until we get those international travellers back, how do we share the message of Australia and its locations to a predominantly Australian audience? And then in the longer term, and I'd love everyone to sort of potentially look at this question, how important a part will Asia play in the first stages of that recovery?
On average, the domestic visitation to the lodges is about 60%. So it's
right.
International. There's great variation across the lodges. Some of them are 80-20, some are 20-80. But the average is only about 40% international. About half of that comes out of North America, which will be a critical market, and we won't be opening borders there, I would imagine, anytime soon until COVID is well and truly under control. Sharing our message, well, one, I guess we already do, in that a lot of our comms is digital, and I know that I've had to work to actually force search from international markets, any of our spend to be forced, because there was massive domestic demand in search on our website for the last 10 years. We have a very healthy database, domestic and international. But remember, Australians are travellers, and there's some $45 billion worth of outbound spend by Australians every year. The majority of those people aren't going to not travel for the next 6 to 12 months. And so there is an opportunity for people to discover their own backyard, so to speak. Tourism Australia have already started doing some really interesting work, and had actually already started to do some really interesting work around holiday here this year post bushfires. One of the things that's been really interesting, and quite a few research reports have shown that out of this, there's been a real rise in national pride in terms of consumer sentiment, and matching that with post bushfires, post drought, post flood, post, really tough time for Australia. There was already an empathy and an awareness in Australia, particularly in the urban centres where the most population live, that there probably hadn't been that level of genuine regional awareness of broad Australia before then. And I think there was a rising empathy and a definite empathy post bushfires. So connect that with a bit of national pride, connect that with closed borders. I genuinely think that Australians will travel. There'll also be a desire to visit friends and family. Many of us are locked out by borders from families. I suspect there'll be the rise of the Australian family holiday. People have had a time to revalue what they value: freedom,
Absolutely.
nature, human connection, and what they value in travel. And so going back to Stephen's idea about the long game, I absolutely hope that part of the long game reframe, and there are a lot of words in this, is the biggest challenge we face is to reframe and rebuild the industry so it is sustainable into the future, and sustainability in all its forms, not just recycling sustainability, not just eco sustainability, but sustainable business. Before we go rushing back to what was, a lot of that was broken or not ideal or not sustainable or not pleasant. So I think the big silver lining out of this is that opportunity to reframe.
Absolutely. I mean, it leads me to another question that I wanted to ask you. But, a luxury lodge, a beautiful hotel, is sort of clean and hygienic by definition, or at least it's perceived to be. But we're going to see in this new world sort of additional regulations on hygiene protocols and safety, obviously, as everything reopens, as guests come back into your properties. And I wonder how we reconcile that with an ethos of sustainability that in some cases has been years in the building and years in the making. And how do we, and this is a question to all of you, how do we avoid going backwards certainly in the sort of physical sustainability about, packaging and harsh cleaning products? I mean, we're all madly buying and using hand sanitizer, and that's a good thing, and washing hands, but cleaning products and hotel shampoo bottles and things, we've sort of worked quite hard to get rid of, in some cases, those small disposable ones. I'm afraid I don't know, which places have them and which don't, but I know there's an awareness of this. And I just wonder how you all feel about this as a concept, and what your properties are sort of, how you feel you'll handle it going forward. Maybe start with Timo.
Look, I think this is a situation. I mean, it is just what it is in one way, and I think there is not necessarily the best solution available there right now. I don't think that we're in danger of just falling back and just completely going back to being not sustainable. You know, I mean, it is for us, it is really in anything that we do as a business, we always look at a sustainable way of doing it. That there will be an increase in the chemicals we use because it is, you know, necessary, of course. Does that mean that we have immediately the best idea? You know, have we looked at it and think like this will be what we will be doing in a month's time? I don't think so, and I don't think that is really a possibility of doing so, because we also don't know where things will go. It's just a simple reality. It's nice planning forward, but I think that, you know, we will improve things, and I think the desire is still there, and I think the desire in businesses and in society as a whole is definitely still there, and it's maybe even stronger. Mm-hmm. You know, to still remain sustainable. I don't think that this situation, or, you know, will just end everything and all the work that has been done. Will there be a spike of using more chemicals, of getting used to it? Definitely, while people find a better way of doing things. And I think this is a temporary thing that is a requirement, you know, for the greater good.
Absolutely.
I believe, you know, that when people are in a situation where we know we have processes in place and we are, you know, the cases drop to minimal amounts, not only in Australia, but worldwide, you know, and that people's heads are a bit more free from this, that quite quickly it will take center stage again, and, you know, the work towards sustainability will be there.
Yeah. Stephen, I might come to you on that one. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a little bit controversial on this front. I believe that obviously I know Ovolo has a pretty strict cleaning regime regardless of COVID-19. I'm sure we are enhancing it, and sure there's going to be some practices that need to be put in place. But I think off what Timo was also saying is I think there'll be the desire for this whole clean state will dissolve to some degree. It needs to be there to protect society, but I think the desire from the consumer will dissolve slightly, because let's face it, the world has been through pandemics before. We've got through it. We will get through this as well. And I truly believe with teamwork and all that, it'll become something which, you know, there's certain things that will become habitual, like washing hands and, you know, and being a little bit more hygienic. But I think that for the most part, I think we need to have it, but I don't think it will become the forefront of a guest stay into the near future. I think it's something that's current, but moving forward, I think it won't be a unique selling point for a consumer. I believe that to some degree, some of these bigger companies which are going to the nth degree are actually probably going overboard and will alienate customers in the future as well, because the level of personality and charisma will not be able to be transposed onto guests. And that's why you go out to a hotel, like Kenny said, you go to a luxury lodge to have the experience, to talk to people, engage and do something different outside your own realm. And I fear that a lot of these bigger hospitality companies are going too far and actually disengaging with their customers, and they're doing it too quickly.
Ken, what do you think?
Listen, I think by nature, as Timo said, you know, the lodges, it's expected that they have extremely high hygiene levels already. They will do whatever is required of them in terms of regulatory, you know, extra cleans, whatever. The reality is plastic wrapping everything in sight is not going to solve it, because someone's still got to touch it. But I was just trying to remember where I read this or who wrote this the other day. From a guest perspective, and they said something around, honestly, in luxury properties, but I would actually argue anywhere, people still prefer to smell their potpourri, not the smell of bleach. And if you're paying to go and stay somewhere or do something, you're not, you know, it's a turn off. People go to travel to experience difference, to experience something out of their life, to test themselves, push themselves, or just enjoy. They're not going to like that when they're just surrounded by the smell of disinfectant and bleach. And so I think there has to be that balance between what will make guests feel as comfortable and as safe as possible, while still delivering what they're looking for, which is an out of normal life experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think hotels are in any case places that you trust, that you need to trust to go to enjoy yourself. You know, I mean, this goes beyond the cleanliness. Obviously, there's a focus on that now. But anyway, you go somewhere and you stay in a foreign place overnight where you sleep and where you are vulnerable. And you know, hotels are places of trust anyway. And I think, you know, you need to provide far more trust than just the cleanliness that is in a hotel. And I think that goes far further. I agree with Stephen. People will just expect it, you know, to be like that. Also, while I'm slightly pessimistic on how fast the recovery, maybe economically, will be, I'm not necessarily there where I think, you know, we're talking of the new normal now. You know, I think there will still be steps, and Stephen mentioned earlier of being reactive. You know, two things. I think, you know, at the moment it is nice planning and working on things that are good for the overall good of the business, be that training, be that working with your partners, be that multi-skilling or anything like that. But I don't think necessarily that, you know, any plan that we now make for what in 6 months' time and what cleaning product we use will necessarily be relevant, because so many things still will happen between.
Yeah, we're in a constant state of change and flux, and what is the normal in a week or 2 weeks' time won't be the normal in a month or 2 months' time. And I don't think any of us really know that. None of us are soothsayers at this point, but we're all trying to sort of project. I'll come to a question that I want to put to all of you, and it is actually my final question. If any of our attendees have any questions to ask, please jot them into the Q&A panel now. But the pandemic has allowed us to take stock and rethink issues or practices in our industry. And I'm wondering if you can each maybe share something that perhaps you've been reticent about voicing up until now that you think should change, and this period of reflection, this pause, has given you time to do that. I might come to you first, Stephen.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing for me is the impact on people. And highlighting people. I think, you know, we've all touched on it, is the experience within hospitality, and at the core of that very experience of people, and highlighting the importance of our employees and looking after our employees, because they are the people that actually instigate and put this experience together for our guests. And for me, it's really highlighted the importance of people within business. And above all profits, above anything else, the people are what drive our businesses, and the people are what, if we can get them passionate, the profits and everything else will come as a matter of course. And for me, I think, you know, seeing some businesses do it very, very well, and other businesses do it very, very poorly. You know, we've seen what's out there in certain areas of our own industry and other industries. I think the ones that have looked after their people will be the ones that thrive going into the future, and the ones that will actually provide the best possible service for guests moving forward.
Great. Penny?
I'll plus that. I completely agree. And particularly staffing was the big issue for hospitality across Australia, even before bushfires, before COVID. And so I think hospitality businesses know just how valuable good hospitality staff are. And maybe this is the time when part of that reframing can be that we put the professional respect back into this as a profession, and a desirable one for many people. I'm not usually reticent about saying anything, but I think one of the things that hasn't, that is going to have some major repercussions is the widespread trauma across Australia. Drought, bushfires, flood, this economic impact. And if part of the healing of that can actually help to solve some of the challenges that we have as a service industry, helping build really great careers for people, keeping people really engaged, re-engaging a lot of Australians who would travel elsewhere and not really understand what was here. There could be a bit of a culture shift.
Absolutely.
Healing.
I
Timo.
think, look, I again, yes, people, 100% of people. I think the way I look at it as well is there's almost that shared vulnerability between our guests and clients and the team that are here. And I think that is something, maybe I've not been reticent about mentioning, but I think is going to be taking on maybe a slightly different dynamic, and, the valuing and the understanding of the opposite that is there, where there's still remnants, in Australia and anywhere in the world of this, almost approach of staff being subservient to what is it, that service is subservient and treat like that. And I think there's maybe now really an opportunity to push, in that way where you speak more of one community of guests and staff that are there, and really making the feeling and the interactions, really more about quality than just being transactional. And I think there's a real opportunity in this.
Well, certainly with all conversations I've had with people who work in service, whether it's in hospitality as front of house, and we've had a few of them in the last few weeks, the thing that they have all sort of said is that they missed very much the ability to be offering that hospitality to people. And I imagine that with staff in some of these, in your hotels, in the luxury lodges portfolio, in overload hotels, there's this genuine desire for staff to, and management obviously, just to get back in doing what they love doing.
Yeah, but equally, I think also everybody that's been in lockdown is really grateful for any interaction, and that to be a genuine interaction as well. I don't think we need to be there where, somebody puts the front up, but where there's really a balanced face-to-face, eye-to-eye conversation that you can have with someone. And again, speaking about the trust earlier, to really have that, where people are grateful that there is someone that, they see to begin with and that they can interact with, but then for that person to be genuine and really the interaction, even if it's just a check-in, a check-out, a valet parking, whatever that may be, an order at the bar, that can be, a better communication and can be, I guess more valuable for both sides.
Yeah. And can I ask you all just one final sort of takeaway, and then we will wrap it up. I have one question which I'll share with you. As an educator of tourism and hospitality students, I am aware of the near future challenges for these students to find jobs. What would be your advice for these students in search of jobs? From Olga Junek. Maybe to Pen?
Send the good ones our way. There's a portal on the Luxury Lodges of Australia website, so they can put their resume and their application into one, several, or all of the lodges. There will also be jobs advertised for the lodges in the back end of that portal. Be prepared to work hard, be prepared to be multi-skilled, be prepared to actually have an incredible career of human connection. But, it's a really interesting time. And if you've got students who are absolutely meant to be in hospitality, please send them our way.
Fantastic. And I have another question.
I always like saying that hospitality is about being hospitable, right? And I think the more passionate people that we get that want to serve and give people unbelievable experiences in life, the better and the faster our industry is going to recover.
Fantastic.
Simple.
I'll just say, I might be a little simple, but I think those that would have thrived in their hospitality careers will still thrive. I don't think that there is a question that, someone that will be great for the industry will be overlooked or will not have a chance to get in.
Which is good news. I do have another question, which to all of you. How do you think your guests, this is from Anita Manfreda, how do you think your guests, some of them affected by financial hardship during this time, will react to the possibility of travel? Do you think they will be willing to pay the same money for those hotel experiences? Do you think they will require additional value added to justify the expense? or maybe they'll be willing to pay more. And I think this is probably a good one for both Stephen and Timo, because I know you've both been very sort of steadfast in your businesses in not discounting and not playing that sort of discounting game. So maybe Timo, could you answer that first?
Look, for me, I think the value of this place has not changed. I don't think, if we had dropped things left, right, and center and say like, all of a sudden it's an automated check-in and, there is only this available and that available, the value of this place remains the value of this place. And I think that is really important. I think it's really important for the industry as well. I understand there will be maybe some changes. There may be some properties out there, and there will be the larger properties, I believe, that have to deal with volume more so than Stephen and our properties, and also Penny's properties, I believe, will have to deal with. I think, it's really important for the property to maintain that we are providing what we provided before this happened, and I don't think it can be dictated by what is there. We've always believed that our hotel, the hotel, is worth what it is worth, and I'm not going to charge anyone more because I need to use a little bit more cleaning product here or there, or it takes me longer to clean the rooms. I don't think that should be a reality. But I also don't think that just, dropping your pants and saying like, okay, now I'm so desperate is necessarily what our brands stand for. And that is for all three the case. I think, we all have stories to tell and we're all about something. And I think that is again where we as small operators have an advantage over, the larger and maybe more mainstream options in hotels.
There's a couple of things, Sally, as well. I mean, one is what Penny touched on earlier, was that there's $45 billion of Australian money that goes overseas, and undoubtedly some of that will have gone into hardship and will disappear. But a lot of that will come back into our economy here domestically. The other thing is, it's not about a race to the bottom. That's just going to hurt everyone. And like Timo said, we believe in our products, we believe in what we do, and I think our customers believe in what we do, and particularly at Ovolo, and I also know Old Clare's very similar. We have a very loyal customer base, and from an Ovolo perspective, we've always seen that it's not about nickel and diming. At Ovolo, you get what we like to call our perks included in your rate, which everyone gets. There will be options out there for those people that have been touched by financial hardship. We're looking at ways that we can do that through our gift cards, through payment gateways, to provide people that still have wanderlust and maybe want to save up for it and pay for it later, and have that desire to travel. Those options, I think, are going to be there for them. But like I said, it's definitely not about a race to the bottom. That's just going to hurt our industry. And like Timo said, there will be definitely companies and hotels out there that do go chasing that. But I think the ones that are true to themselves and true to their product, like the Old Clare, like Ovolo, like the luxury lodges, will end up thriving because people understand the value of what we deliver and how we deliver it, and compromising on rate will ultimately compromise on service and experience.
Penny, do you have any thoughts?
Australia is an expensive country to do business, and I 159% agree with Timo. People have to judge the offering by the value of what it offers, not by a predetermined dollar. You don't walk into a Maserati showroom with a Honda budget. No? So, and that's just reality. And while, we absolutely, there are so many options across Australia for people to have time out travel experiences that do fit any budget. But people have to be realistic about the fact that every hospitality business has to be sustainable. Otherwise, it just won't be there.
Absolutely. Well, if there's anything that we want, it's to have all of your businesses fully sustainable, so they are there. I can't wait to be traveling to far and wide. I still have a gift voucher to use at the Old Clare Hotel, which I think is valid till 2021. So I'll be checking.
2023, actually.
Oh, well, there we go.
It's a very valuable one too.
Please.
Very valuable.
So I think at that point we will wrap it up. Everyone has busy schedules, and thank you all so much for participating. We will have another webinar in 2 weeks' time, and it's going to be on the subject of wine and what wine service, wine lists will look like in this so-called new normal, the 2 N words that we're not allowed to use. What will we be drinking, and how will we be doing it? But for the moment, just thank you very much to Timo, Bures, Penny Rafferty and Stephen Howard. Thank you very much for being in conversation with us.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
You can see Timo.